Hi. So this morning, the US and China surprised the world by announcing a joint declaration on combating climate change. This joint declaration came about through several secret meetings over the past few months. So therefore, my question is, does this joint declaration signify a fundamental change in the relationship between these two superpowers, who up to now have been fundamentally opposed in the areas of security, trade, and technology?
Thank you for that, Praveen. Ewan?
No, I don't think it signifies a fundamental change in the relationship between the two great powers. It is a great sign that the two countries are able to cooperate on this global challenge that is climate change. But unfortunately, with the global balance of power the way it is, the tension and the competition will still be there. However, I think it is, from Australia's perspective, it is great that we can see them cooperate.
Lavina, is this a positive sign, though? You know, it's been a bruising few years, hasn't it? You go back to the trade war, of course, between the US and China, and we've had tensions over the South China Sea, tensions over Taiwan, ramping up of language. Does this offer the slight opportunity here of some greater rapprochement?
I'd hate to be a dampener on things before they've ever even begun.
But you will.
But I think at the moment it's more of symbolic value than it is in terms of substance. So there's very little detail there about what the deal involves. Now, I also think that a key part of the US-China competition is that it's a tech competition. And China views emerging technologies in the environmental space as being part of that tech competition. So I'm really struggling to see how they can both compete aggressively but also cooperate on these emerging technologies. So I'm a bit sceptical about where this is going to go.
Chris, even though there's been a bit of a frosty period of relations and a lot of rhetoric, there's still been ongoing contact at a really senior level. And now with this, do you take away some sign of perhaps a bit of a shift here, or is it too soon?
I think it's too soon to tell, and might I say that in 2014, Barack Obama and Xi Jinping signed something that sounded very, very similar. And we know what came after that. I was at COP26, I was at the G20. The thing that was the big story there wasn't Australia and France, it was the fact that China and Russia didn't go to either of those events. They sent their delegations, but their leadership did not go. There can be no solution to climate change without China being involved and the United States. Let's hope that is the case. But I thought the most telling intervention at the G20 was by Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister from Russia, when he was asked why they weren't signing up to 2050 by an Italian journalist. And he said, what's magic about this 2050 number? You cooked up this agenda at the G7 and served it to us at the G20, and that's not the way that we're going to play this particular game. I think that what we saw this time around was a disconnect of Russia and China from the world order as it stands, because they want to remake it, and perhaps rightly so, in the image and likeness of something that suits them better.
Well, I agree that currently there's not enough substance to the pledge, but we can see that there is a domestic drive within China to do more on climate change. It's not just about looking good on the international stage. From China's perspective, its domestic messaging is that combating climate change and reducing emissions is necessary for the sustainability of the Chinese nation. So it goes back to what Xi Jinping has saying about, the common prosperity, about the future of the Chinese nation. So it's not just about looking good on the international stage, but a domestic drive. So on that, I think we can see more actions from China on climate change.
James Paterson, does this not, at least from China's side, say China is being recognised here by the US as a country of perhaps even equal standing, that it needs to do a deal with, to deal with something that both sides have recognised as an existential crisis?
Well, Stan, when it comes to emissions, China is much more than an equal to the United States because it is the world's largest emitter and by some margin. And of course, the United States is the second largest emitter. China has been increasing their emissions every year up until this year and will do so for a number of years yet. And if we are to have any hope in reducing global carbon emissions, it will require China to do so. So the Australian government certainly welcomes this initiative, but we're closely scrutinising how it's implemented in practice because at the end of the day, the planet pays on results, not on promises, and we have to very closely scrutinise that.
Of course, let's not forget that China also has the biggest population.
And per capita, Ed, the US is still the biggest, a bigger emitter than China. And of course, historically, the US has been a bigger emitter than China. But what do you take away from this? Is it potentially more of a breakthrough?
Well,
is there something to build on?
Two things. First, I can't let that comment go. The Morrison government that took a pamphlet to Glasgow is going to look at the detail of what is in this deal when they're unable to put detail themselves about what they're doing in emissions, I think is laughable, first point. Second, I think obviously people will want to test naturally what this agreement means, right? But there is a degree of significance about it. As you put in your question, a lot of this has been happening behind closed doors for some time. We know that America is taking this seriously and that they need to move on this. We have China has already announced in some of their BRI investments that, from what I understand, they won't now finance coal-fired power, but they've got a big job internally, as has been indicated. They've got a big job internally because they, and as James has said, their emissions are still looking to go one way, and that's got to be dealt with. But what we have here, let's not walk away from this. We have two of the big economies of the world, two of the big emitters of the world, who've managed to put aside their difference to try and make a difference, at least on climate change. So that's a start. But I agree, we've got to see how this all plays out.